Hello, I'm Stephen Moir. I'm the City of Edinburgh Council's Executive Director of Resources, and I'm delighted to be able to speak to you at this really important Meet the Buyer event for 2021 as part of the Supplier Development Programme. What I'd like to do today is just outline some of the strategic context for the City of Edinburgh Council, and particularly what that means in terms of our priorities, what we're trying to achieve as an organisation, and then really importantly, how you can best work with us in the future as key partners and key suppliers. In terms of the city itself, I think it's probably always helpful to just remind ourselves a little bit about Edinburgh before we come on to the council. So first and foremost, as I think everybody will know, we are the capital of Scotland. Really importantly, we're also a diverse, cosmopolitan city of over 513,000 people, and we're certainly rapidly growing, even with the challenges of coronavirus. As many people will know who visited, who live in, who work in, or have studied in Edinburgh, we're also a World Heritage Site twice over. We're also the home of the Scottish Government, the Scottish Parliament, we're a royal residence, and then really importantly, we're a home of many students with 4 universities in and around the city, the first and perhaps most famous of which is Edinburgh University itself, originally founded in 1582 by the Town Council under a royal charter. We're very famous for our many cultural events, our festivals, and obviously during the course of the last 15 to 16 months, those have been significantly curtailed due to the pandemic. But normally, we would see upwards of 4.9 million visitors per year through Edinburgh. So a big, bustling, diverse capital city. I think particularly importantly in terms of our economy and the Scottish economy overall, the city and the southeast of Scotland overall accounts for something like 24% of the economy of Scotland. So we are a really important contributor to the Scottish economy. And Edinburgh having a vibrant economy, Edinburgh having vibrant small to medium enterprises, larger businesses that we can work with, is all to the good for the city, for jobs, for employment, for opportunities. And of course, finally, perhaps one of our most famous characters in more recent times, we're also the birthplace of Harry Potter. So we have some interesting connections to Hogwarts and other places as well. So that's a bit about the city. But what about us as a council? So the City of Edinburgh Council is the second largest local authority in Scotland. We provide over 700 discrete services to the people that live in, work in, study in, or visit Edinburgh. That can range from social work to education, to transport and environment, to construction services around our major capital programme. We're a hugely diverse organisation with many opportunities for suppliers to work with us and for colleagues to seek to be part of public sector contracts. We're currently led by our SNP and Labour coalition administration, who has been in charge of running the council since 2017. We're a big organisation, as I've said, but really importantly, in terms of our buying power, we have a gross annual budget of 1.3 billion in terms of revenue and operating expenditure. Over and above that, we have a sizable capital programme, so a great deal of our investment goes into construction, into capital projects as well. To give you an indication of the types of buying power we have and why our suppliers matter so much to us, in 2019-20, our total spending with external suppliers was around £684 million. So big, important contribution to the city's economy. We very much see ourselves as an anchor institution, and we very much see ourselves as a key creator of jobs, key creator of business, key creator of opportunity. Directly employing over 18,500 colleagues, we see our supply chain, our partners who work with us very much as partners through procurement and through our supply chain as being a critical part of how we deliver effective public services for the people of Edinburgh. I think perhaps setting the context for the city, setting the context for the council, I wanted to then talk about our key strategic priorities for the future so that you can understand the types of things we are very much looking forward for and very much looking for your engagement with in the future. So in February 2021, earlier this year, the council approved its new 3-year business plan. Now, our business plan, known as Our Future Council, Our Future City, is very much in response to the Edinburgh 2050 City Vision. That was co-produced by the residents, the people of Edinburgh themselves, through a massive public engagement exercise, alongside a range of community partners, not just in the public sector, but also within the private sector and the community and voluntary sector. And Edinburgh's long-term vision about the type of city we want to be and the people that live here want it to become is about Edinburgh being a fair, thriving, pioneering and welcoming city. And we see that very much at the heart of what we want to try and help achieve as a council. So for our business plan in the coming 3 years, as you might expect, the immediate and perhaps biggest challenge we face, and we will need support from our suppliers with, is responding to and learning the lessons of the COVID-19 pandemic, which we are indeed still living with and managing through. It's really important as part of our business plan for the future that we also prioritise and support the role of our communities and indeed community organisations. So that very much speaks to our desire to increase the amount of spend we have within Edinburgh and with local suppliers. We are a fair trade city, we are a fair work city, and we are absolutely committed to those principles through all we do in a procurement sense. Really importantly, as part of helping Edinburgh recover from the pandemic, we want to ensure that we focus on a fair and green recovery. And I'll come back to some of the sustainability credentials and issues that we're very much facing into for the future. And finally, our new business plan, which we set in February, our future council, our future city, really sets a guide for us, our overarching North Star around what we're going to be focusing on over the next 3 years. And I think giving you some context around what we want to focus on gives you a better understanding of the types of suppliers that we want to work with and how we can help you create successful engagement with us. So in terms of our 3 strategic priorities, the business plan is very much focused around 3 key areas. First and foremost, as a city, following the Edinburgh Poverty Commission that we commissioned and was independently led, we want to tackle and end poverty in this city by 2030. Huge challenge, huge opportunity, and one that I'm going to come back to. Our second key theme in our business plan, or priority in our business plan, is an equally challenging ambition, but one that is really important in terms of the future of our city, but also in terms of the future of the planet. And that's becoming a much more sustainable and carbon net zero city by 2030. That's an ambitious target that we've set for the city alongside a range of other partners and organisations who have equally signed up to that. So that isn't just about the council becoming carbon net zero, it's about Edinburgh becoming a carbon net zero city in its own right. And then third, and equally important, our other main priority over the next 3 years is very much around well-being and equalities. And again, I'm going to talk about that, but that's very much about improving life chances for everybody, addressing some of the issues and linked to some of the points around tackling poverty, but also making sure that we come back to that fair, thriving and inspiring city that we want to be in the future. So our business plan sets out a whole range of detail. It's accessible through the council's website, and there are a whole range of information there that will support understanding what that looks like. I think particularly importantly, these 3 strategic priorities that I've outlined around poverty, sustainability and well-being very much demonstrate that our approach is cross-cutting and cross-political in terms of all of our political groups. It's about delivering the agenda that matters most for the city and matters most to the council. It's also about how we're going to align our budget and how we spend our money, and indeed how we procure colleagues to work with us in the future. So understanding our context and our priorities is really key in terms of the types of suppliers we will want to work with in the future, and indeed the types of opportunities that we'll create for you in the future. So if I turn then to the first of our 3 priorities over the next few years, ending poverty in Edinburgh by 2030, very much focusing on fair work and a thriving city economy. We know from the Edinburgh Poverty Commission that at present we have sizable proportions of what is a generally affluent, high-skilled city also living below the poverty line. For us, that means that between now and 2030, to reduce Edinburgh's poverty rates by 10%, that means we have to lift 800 children out of poverty every year between now and 2030. That means we have to lift 2,100 people out of poverty every year between now and 2030. To ensure that nobody lives in persistent poverty, so ongoing poverty, chronic poverty, we also will have to look at lifting over 1,000 people out of persistent poverty every year. That means we have a huge challenge. And of course, combined with the impact of the coronavirus, we believe that in 2021, we will see the fastest rise in poverty in this city since the 1980s. And that's very much based on our understanding of the number of unemployment benefit claimants in Edinburgh, which has significantly increased during the period of the pandemic. So for us, what we're going to be doing to help create opportunities is invest in one of the biggest public sector affordable housing house building programmes in Scotland. We're going to undertake more work to maximise citizen income. We have at the moment something like £80 million in unclaimed benefits that we want to make sure gets to the people that need it most. And then I think particularly importantly, from a procurement perspective, we will continue to invest in our fair work principles and continue to focus on creating real community benefits such as jobs, training, employment opportunities and upskilling. So we see that that's going to be really, really important. All of this, of course, will be backed up by our expansion of our flagship Edinburgh Guarantee, creating jobs for young people. So ending poverty is a clear commitment from this council for the future, and one that we would really want to work with suppliers to help embrace and take forward. Our second strategic priority is around becoming a net zero, climate ready city by 2030. To be net zero by 2030, just to give you an idea of what that looks like, that means we need to decarbonise our transport arrangements, our whole transport arrangements as a city, 12 times faster than we are now. We need to decarbonise the homes in the city 50 times faster than we are at present. We need to create more renewable energy, more heat networks. We need to use new standards and work with new sustainable materials. For example, building more passive house buildings to a standard that makes sure they're sustainable, their carbon emissions are low. We're doing that right now with the construction of the new Curry High School, which will be built, and I believe it's the first in Scotland that will be built to the new passive house standards. We see that as a real opportunity. And of course, on the back of that, we want to create more green skilled jobs and strengthen our supply chain to contribute to that. Clearly, this has huge implications for our infrastructure planning, for our capital investment, but most importantly, from the perspective of people that want to work with us and that we would want to work with, that has implications for our procurement, our investment in capital, and particularly for our continued drive towards a green economy. To be net zero as a council, we're going to have to retrofit over 400 council buildings, including some historic and listed buildings, which will be a huge challenge. So continued investment in energy, in sustainability, in heating and lighting systems in our own estate is going to be a priority for our procurement. That also means that we're going to have to transition our own fleet, our cars, our vans, and other vehicles that we use to EV charging points and have a completely different electric vehicle infrastructure than we do at present. That means changes to our supplies, our supply chain, our services, and obviously we're keen to work with partners who are going to invest in sustainability in their own businesses and make sure that we help reduce unnecessary travel, reduce carbon emissions, and help ensure we can achieve that net zero target by 2030. We have a huge opportunity to build on sustainability this year in Scotland, given COP26 happening later this year in Glasgow. But as the capital, we also see it's our responsibility to embrace sustainability, to drive green jobs, and improve our sustainability credentials, both directly but through our supply chain. So a clear opportunity there. And then finally, the third theme in our business plan around equality and well-being. Healthy, inclusive local places are what matter most, and local communities are what matter most to us in Edinburgh. We want Edinburgh to be sustainable, to be resilient, but we also want a city that has strong, cohesive communities at its heart. That means that we want to improve the way we undertake our own service delivery with a real core focus on the prevention of poverty, so actually preventing people falling into poverty or families falling into poverty, and improving the health and well-being of all. That means that we are going to be looking really proactively at how we bring together public services, our own and potentially with others such as health and police, and deliver them locally within neighbourhoods. As we describe it, the concept of 20-minute neighbourhoods where people can access the services they need more locally, more readily in each neighbourhood. We will also want to focus on supporting more local economy and more local business growth and the creation of employment opportunities, as I've said. And we see that our partners and suppliers who work with us at all levels have a real contribution to make in that way, as well as us using our buying power to help ensure that jobs and employment opportunities, as well as community benefits, are fostered through this process. That means that we're going to have to take a really proactive approach to make better use of our own land and buildings across the city. We want to improve our town and local centres across our communities. And then particularly for us, we want to continue to invest in sustainable local travel and sustainable onward travel outside the city. And finally, We are now living in a digital age. We always were, but I think the pandemic has only accelerated the change to more digital and a digital economy. So we see that working continually to improve the way we are from a digital perspective, to become a more smart city and to enable access through digital means, not just a 20-minute neighbourhood, but potentially a 5-second neighbourhood concept for our city is going to be really key. Access, inclusion, well-being, jobs and economy, all absolutely critical to the way we see Edinburgh working in the future, and absolutely critical for the suppliers that work with us. Finally, from a procurement perspective, my colleague Iain Strachan, our Chief Procurement Officer, will be talking in some more detail about the types of things we're trying to drive specifically through our sustainable procurement strategy, which we approved in 2020. From my perspective as the director accountable for our procurement and commercial functions, I'm clear that we are not only looking for suppliers to work with us who can deliver the right quality and obviously the right value, because we have our duty around best value, but I'm really clear we want to continue to drive fair work principles, stronger community benefits. We want to also do what we can around community wealth building through our supply chain and indeed through our procurement activities. So from my perspective, our future work with our supply chain and individual suppliers, it's not about a client-contractor relationship. It's about a genuine partnership where you can help us to deliver the strategic priorities for Edinburgh into the future and create a fairer, thriving and inspiring city. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Iain Strachan. I'm City of Edinburgh Council's Chief Procurement Officer. Delighted to be here today. I'm joined by my colleague, Paula McLeay. Paula, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Paula McLeay and I'm the Senior Manager.
So I think you're on mute, Paula.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yep.
So Stephen Moir, unfortunately, he can't make it today. He's appearing at committee, so we're here to answer any questions that you might have. It's a really important event, this, for us. Working with SMEs is hugely vital to the city's economy, the recovery from the pandemic, and how we move forward. So it's a great opportunity, and thank you for taking the time and listening to us today. We've got another session a bit later on, and you might not be able to make it. Is that we really want to work with SMEs. We hope that you want to work with us for some of the reasons that Stephen outlined there, and I'll touch upon later. But you know, for us and the team, we're very passionate about maximising the outputs that can be delivered through public sector procurement, making best use of taxpayer money, looking to secure some great outcomes around fair work, around community benefits, and tackling the climate emergency as well. So it'd be great to hear some of the thoughts that you might have about that today. We've got a first question here, Paula. Are there any new initiatives, options in place to increase opportunities for SMEs? Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, absolutely in point with what we're here to discuss today. In our procurement strategy, which I think Stephen mentioned, increasing spend with local SMEs is one of our key strategic objectives, where we've done an awful lot in that space over the last couple of years, but there's much more that we're committed to doing. We already look to ensure that in our well-established processes, we lock opportunities where we can. We encourage consortia bids. We always look to make sure that we engage with the market and look to publicise opportunities. We'll put pins out where we can, and really look to understand what the market is interested in, what the market can bear as well. I mean, there's a couple of examples. We put in place a new housing capital framework last year, about 140 million. We put 15 lots together for that, and around 38% of successful suppliers were local suppliers. So that's a really encouraging outcome there. One of the things we're probably particularly keen just to bring out maybe in this session, and Stephen touched on it there, in terms of net zero and the council's huge desire to tackle the climate emergency. Paula, might be helpful for the audience just to hear a little bit about what we're looking for from suppliers in that space.
Yeah, I think we recognise that the journey we need to go on with our net zero strategy and our climate ambitions is one that we have to do hand in hand with local businesses and suppliers, that we need to work together to develop, identify our needs more clearly over the longer term, give a bit of confidence to the market, and also collaborate on what and how we can deliver to meet those needs and strengthen the supply chain. So, as we develop our policy agenda, we are not doing it abstracted from the realities of the market. We want to work with businesses to identify any barriers and to collaborate on the art of the possible. So I think there's a really positive opportunity, both immediately in terms of the opportunity the council represents to access business, but also over the long term to grow the environment for our collaboration with local businesses much more strongly than we are even doing today.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Paula. We had a question in there about, can you tell me if a local authority has a framework in place, would they still use quick quotes processes, or would they have to call up directly from the framework? For us, there's a number of different options that we would use. It would depend upon the opportunity in question. So really, it depends. Certainly for smaller opportunities, we would look to use, see where there's a local supply chain that we could take advantage of that would best meet our needs and help the local economy. What I would say is we always encourage any potential interested suppliers to register through PCS. They can sign up for email alerts for opportunities that might be of interest for them, because all regulated contracts are advertised there for the council and other public sector partners. Always encourage people to sign up with SDP as well. Some great materials and support there for businesses looking to bid for public sector work. There was a good question actually here, so let me scroll to it. There's so many here. So yeah, there was a question around ending poverty. Does the council have a plan on how we approach that? Will it be done via education or job creation, apprenticeships? Paula, do you want to say a bit about some of the plans we have around that?
Yeah, so Edinburgh City Council has an end poverty plan that we approved last year, coming out of a 2-year-long poverty commission. And you might imagine that with something as complex as poverty, the answer is everything and more. So yes, educational attainment is absolutely one of the areas that we are targeting, but as is both fair work, employment opportunities, but also career opportunities, and working with local businesses to develop those both in the business framework, but also over the lifetime of an employee's career. So I think there's a lot that Edinburgh has to be proud of in terms of our workforce and the both skilled and general workforce, but there's more that we can do to make sure that we work hand in hand with businesses to make sure the right skills are in place to help businesses thrive, but also to make sure that that benefits the whole city. So we do have a plan, and I'm happy to share a link to the strategic plan for the council and for the city. But it is, as you might imagine, an amalgamation of multiple actions in that.
Thanks very much, Paula. Very good question from here. What impact has COVID had on the council's view on deliverable community benefits? I mean, certainly with the terrible impact of the pandemic last year, we fully understand that we won't have delivered as much by way of community benefits as we would have wished. From the council's perspective, where contracts are still being performed, then there'll still be the obligation around community benefits, which will be rolled up. And importantly for me, what might have been a good deliverable then might be different now. And we always look to work with suppliers and local communities, partners, to work out what the best, most suitable community benefit is. And I find it really exciting, actually, that the menu, the spread, if you like, of what is seen as a a good community benefit, helping increase social value, has changed over recent years, and it isn't just apprenticeships and opportunities for young people, really important though that is, but what else can we do in terms of building communities and so much else in that. Some great new examples come forward. We're seeing more use of funds and money for communities to spend in good, positive ways as well, and I suppose shaped by them, which is great in terms of community engagement. So I think we'll see this developing, and I think it's a really exciting time in terms of community benefits and what will come forward going forward. There was sorry, I'm just trying to read the question here. That one, pardon me. The decarbonisation of transport is a key activity for the council. EV charging will be a large part of this. How does the council plan to meet their infrastructure requirements? There's obviously a huge challenge there. I think, I'm not sure if Paula's...
No, I'm happy to cover this. Clearly, there is our city mobility plan very much emphasises that we want to see more people on public transport, and we want to support active travel as the primary means of getting around the city. But we recognise both for businesses and for citizens there may be a need for EV infrastructure. Our new net zero strategy, which is published at the moment but going to committee next week, and we'll be consulting on it over the summer, does very much look at how we can strengthen our EV infrastructure in the city. In the first instance, we'd be looking at those things such as public service hubs and the alignment of vehicles that are servicing the public and our population needs. But we also recognise that we need to do that sort of collaboration and infrastructure development for businesses, and that there will always be a need for citizens. So looking across our EV infrastructure in order to ensure that it is fit for purpose, but very much enhances our primary agenda of increasing public transport and active travel as well, it will be key to the next 10 years for the city.
Thanks, Paula. There's a question in, we've recently seen an unprecedented range of price increases and particularly lead times on a wide spectrum of materials. Are there any mitigation measures or consideration to contractors and SMEs who are currently tied into current contracts and programmes? Really important point. We've seen a lot of that. Impact of COVID, impact of Brexit, and very much for the council, we see we see that our relationship with suppliers is a partnering relationship. We understand the pressures that they're under. I mean, when the pandemic hit, we did a lot of engagement with suppliers. We really looked to increase our payment times to speed up and help their cash flow. If people have issues around supply chain and materials, we also just speak to us. Tell us what the problem is, and we'll look to work through it together. There's a Scottish government policy in place around supplier relief, really looking to make sure that as we come out of this, that both the council and suppliers are well placed to move on and rebound as best that we can together. And we want to make sure that our key partners are there and able to deliver their services to us, because we're going to need those more than ever. So really, it's just about engagement, and we look to work with one another in a positive way, if that helps. What I would say is, because I think we're sort of running towards the end of time, any other particular questions people have, please feel free to visit colleagues on the stand today. They'll be delighted to help with any questions. We have monthly virtual supplier engagement sessions. You can sign up with that by email. Please do that. And great to have a conversation with people away from a tender process. And we know how it can be difficult to access people in the council at times as well, especially in this virtual world. And otherwise, we're always happy, willing to speak to people if you want to get in touch with us as well. I'm just seeing we've got something else there. We've talked about SMEs. Okay. So I'm just seeing what. Confirm that there's a question of, we've got a current framework for contractor works for construction projects. A question about what we're going to do about that. We've currently extended that framework, so it's still in place for a bit longer. We wanted to see what the state of the market was going to be in following the pandemic. So right now we're looking at options about how best we replace that. And do we do it the same? Do we do it in a different way? We've been speaking to SFT and speaking to other potential partners as well. So really a case of watch this space. You might want to ask Scott on the stand today, but otherwise I just reiterate, if you sign up for PCS, then you'll be able to see good opportunities come through, or as ever, just come and speak to us. But I think, thank you very much for your time today. Any other questions, please let us know. And, we hope you want to work with us, because we want to work with you. And thank you for your time.